The vibration of my phone against the solid oak of the dining table was the only sound in the room, breaking a silence I had carefully cultivated for the last 3 hours. I looked down at the screen, seeing my son's name, Jason, illuminate the glass, followed by a text message that was meant to be the final shovel of dirt on my agency as a father and a homeowner. Your lake cabin sold today, Dad. It's done. Before I tell you what I did next, please like and subscribe to follow this story. I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't type a furious reply in all capital letters. I didn't even sigh. I simply took a sip of my black coffee, which had gone lukewarm in the time I had been sitting there, and looked across the table at the man who had supposedly just bought my property. He thinks it's over, I said quietly, placing the phone face down. David, the man sitting opposite me, shook his head slowly. He was a stranger to me only a week ago, but now we were bound together by a conspiracy of integrity. He has no idea, does he, Thomas? No, I replied, smoothing out the tablecloth with a hand that I was proud to note did not shake. He has no idea that you called me first. To understand how a father reaches the point where he is willing to watch his only son walk into a legal buzzsaw, you have to understand the history. You have to understand the cabin. And perhaps most painfully, you have to understand Jason. I am 67 years old. I spent 40 years as a forensic accountant. My entire professional life was dedicated to finding the things people tried to hide. I looked for the missing decimals, the ghost employees, the siphoned funds in construction projects. I built a career on the philosophy that the truth is always there, written in ink and binary code, waiting for someone patient enough to read it. I retired 3 years ago with a comfortable pension, a paid-off house in the suburbs, and the jewel of my life, the cabin on Lake Bennett. The cabin wasn't a mansion. It was a cedar-sided A-frame built in the late 80s, sitting on 3 acres of white pine and birch. My late wife, Alina, and I had bought it when Jason was just a boy. It was where I taught him to fish. It was where Alina spent her final summer, sitting on the screened-in porch, watching the loons dive into the glass-still water. That place was not just real estate. It was a repository of my history. It was the one place where I could still feel Alina's presence in the smell of the old wood stove and the way the morning light hit the kitchen counter. Jason, however, saw it differently. Jason is 32. He is my son and I love him, but I have not liked him for a long time. That is a hard admission for a parent to make. We want to believe our children are victims of circumstance, but Jason was a victim of his own appetites. He had been a charming boy who grew into a man who believed the world owed him a living. He bounced between sales jobs, always looking for the big score, always driving a car he couldn't afford, and always marrying the wrong women. His current wife, Tiffany, was the catalyst. She was a woman who looked at the world and calculated its liquidation value. When they came to dinner, she didn't look at the family photos, she looked at the silverware. She asked questions about my estate planning with a casualness that made my skin crawl. You know, Dad, Jason had said to me 6 months ago during a visit that felt more like a scouting mission. The market in the North Woods is peaking. If you ever wanted to offload the cabin, now's the time. You're getting older. The maintenance must be a nightmare. I enjoy the maintenance, I had told him, cutting my steak with precision. It keeps me active, and I'm not selling. That house stays in the family. You'll get it when I'm dead. Right, he had said, exchanging a glance with Tiffany. But that could be 20 years. Think of the equity sitting there doing nothing. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, I said. It's holding my memories. I thought that was the end of it. I was naive. A forensic accountant should know better than to trust anyone, even his own blood, when money is tight and greed is high. The unraveling began last Tuesday. I was in my home office organizing my tax documents for the upcoming year. Old habits die hard when my landline rang. Few people call the landline anymore, mostly telemarketers or scammers. I almost let it go to the machine, but something, perhaps a lifetime of intuition, made me pick it up. Thomas Miller, a voice asked. It was a male voice, deep, hesitant, but respectful, speaking. Mr. Miller, my name is David Henderson. You don't know me, but I'm currently in the process of purchasing a property at 442 Pine Ridge Road on Lake Bennett. The world seemed to stop spinning for a second. The air left the room. 442 Pine Ridge Road was my cabin. I'm sorry, I said, my voice dropping an O. Tave becoming the voice I used to use in boardrooms when I found the embezzlement. You must have the wrong number. My cabin is not for sale. There was a long pause on the other end. That's what I was afraid of, David said. Mr. Miller, I'm a real estate attorney by trade, though I'm buying this place for my personal use. I've been dealing with a seller's agent who claims to represent you. I have a purchase agreement in front of me with your signature on it. My hand tightened around the receiver until my knuckles turned white. I have signed nothing. I suspected as much, David continued. The price was aggressive, too low for the area. They wanted a quick close, cash only, no inspection. and when I looked at the title work, the power of attorney document they provided seemed fresh. It was notarized 3 weeks ago. I have never signed a power of attorney, I said, the cold rage beginning to settle in my gut. Who is the seller listed? The documents are being handled by a Jason Miller, acting as your agent under the POA. Jason, the betrayal didn't hit me like a hot fire, it hit me like absolute zero. It froze me, my son. He wasn't just asking for money anymore, he was stealing my life. He was selling a leaner's sanctuary to pay for his debts. Mr. Henderson, I said, thank you for calling me. You have saved me a great deal of trouble. I assume you're going to back out of the deal. I should, David said. But I hate fraudsters, and I really love that cabin. I've been looking for a place on Lake Bennett for 5 years. If these people are trying to steal your home, they deserve to be caught. If I just walk away, they'll try it with someone else who might not check the paperwork as carefully. I closed my eyes and thought. I thought about Jason's smirk. I thought about Tiffany's calculating eyes. I thought about the law. Mr. Henderson, I said, are you free to meet? I think we have an opportunity here. That was how David Henderson ended up at my kitchen table. Over the next 4 days, we orchestrated a play that would have made a sting operation proud. I contacted my personal attorney, a shark of a woman named Sarah Jenkins, who had handled my estate planning. When I told her what Jason was doing, she didn't offer platitudes, she offered ammunition. It's fraud, Thomas, she said. Forgery, wire fraud, identity theft. If the value is over a certain amount, which it is, it's a felony. Multiple felonies. I know, I said. If we stop it now, Sarah warned, he gets scared off. He might claim it was a misunderstanding. He might claim you gave him verbal permission and he just helped with the paperwork. It becomes a he said, she said mess that drags on in civil court. I don't want a mess, I said. I want clarity. Then we let it proceed, Sarah said. We let him think he's won. We let him arrive at the closing. We let him sign the final deed as your proxy. Once he accepts the funds or attempts to, the crime is complete, irreversible. So that is what we did. David played the part of the eager, somewhat naive buyer perfectly. He communicated with Jason solely through the shady real estate agent Jason had found, a man named Rick who I discovered had lost his license twice in the last decade. David agreed to the rush. He agreed to the cash price. He wired the funds to the escrow account of a title company that Sarah had alerted. The title company was in on it. The escrow officer, a stern woman named Mrs. Gable, was briefed. The money was there, sitting in a frozen account, a bait that Jason could see but never touch, which brings us back to the text message. Your lake cabin sold today, Dad, it's done. I looked at David. He's texting me because he wants to get ahead of the narrative, I deduced. He's going to come here. He's going to tell me he sold it for me, that he did me a favor. He'll probably present me with a check for half the amount, keeping the rest as a commission or to cover expenses that don't exist. He thinks if he hands me money, I won't press charges. He's coming over, David asked. He'll be here within the hour, I said. He needs my signature on the proceeds check eventually, or he needs to manipulate me into depositing it into a joint account. He can't spend the money until he clears the hurdle of me finding out. What do you want to do? David asked. I want you to stay, I said. I want you to sit right there. I stood up and walked to the window. My suburban street was quiet, a lawnmower hummed in the distance. It was a peaceful day for a demolition. I called Sarah. He's coming. Before I tell you what I did next, please like and subscribe to follow this story. The police are already briefed, Thomas, she said. Detective Miller, no relation, is parked 2 streets over. Just give the signal. Not yet, I said. I need to hear him say it. I need to look him in the eye. 45 minutes later, Jason's flashy leased BMW pulled int. Oh, my driveway. Tiffany was with him. Of course she was. She wouldn't miss the payday. I watched them walk up the path. Jason looked energetic, almost manic. He was wearing a suit, which was unusual for him on a Tuesday. Tiffany was wearing large sunglasses and carrying a bottle of champagne. The audacity was breathtaking. They were coming to celebrate robbing me. I opened the door before they could ring the bell. Dad, Jason boomed, stepping in and trying to hug me. I stiffened, allowing the contact but not returning it. He smelled of expensive cologne and nervous sweat. Surprise, we have big news. Big news, I asked, stepping back and leading them toward the kitchen. I got your text. What do you mean the cabin is sold? Tiffany breezed past me, her heels clicking on the hardwood. Oh, Thomas, don't be grumpy. We've solved all your problems. They walked into the kitchen and stopped dead. David was sitting at the table, a folder of documents open in front of him. He didn't look up immediately. He took a slow sip of my coffee. Who is this? Jason asked, his voice tightening. Jason, Tiffany, I said calmly, gesturing to the chair. This is David Henderson. Jason's face went slack. The color drained out of it so fast it looked like a magic trick. He knew the name. It was on the contract he had forged. I don't. Jason stammered. Mr. Henderson. What are you doing here? I invited him, I said. Sit down. Dad, I don't understand. Jason tried to pivot, a desperate smile plastering itself onto his face. Mr. Henderson bought the cabin, I handled it for you, I used the power of attorney we discussed. We never discussed a power of attorney, Jason, I said. My voice wasn't loud, it was the voice of the auditor, the voice of facts, and I never signed one. You're confused, Tiffany interjected, her voice shrill. You forget things, Thomas. You signed it last month. We have the notary stamp. Ah, yes, David spoke up for the first time. The notary, a Miss Jennifer Goins, I believe she's your cousin, isn't she, Tiffany? Tiffany's mouth snapped shut. Here is the situation, I said, walking over to the counter and leaning against it. I needed the support. My legs felt heavy, not with fear, but with sorrow. Mr. Henderson called me last week. He thought it was strange that I was selling my beloved cabin for 30% under market value. He thought it was strange that the signature on the deed didn't match the signature on the previous property records. Jason looked at David, then at me. The trapped animal panic was setting in. Dad, look, maybe I rushed it, but I did it for you. The market is crashing. I got you cash. I was going to surprise you with the check today. Were you? I asked. Or were you going to tell me you sold it for $200,000 when you actually sold it for $300 and pocket the difference? And then guilt me into loaning you the rest. I'm your son, Jason shouted. I'm trying to help you. You hoard that place and you never use it. I use it every summer, I said, and it's mine. It is not yours to sell. It's done. Jason slammed his hand on the table. The papers are signed. The money is wired. It's over. You can't undo it without suing your own son. Do you really want to do that? Do you want to drag the family name through the mud? He was banking on my shame. He was banking on the idea that I was a soft old man who would rather lose a house than lose face. He didn't know I had spent 40 years destroying people who thought they were smarter than the rules. I don't have to sue you, Jason, I said softly. I nodded to David. David pulled a thick envelope from his briefcase. The wire transfer you were expecting at the title company, David said. It was flagged. The account is frozen. The title company knows the power of attorney is a forgery. They filed a suspicious activity report this morning. And I added, I spoke to Detective Miller about an hour ago. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a man. Police, Jason whispered. You called the police on me. You committed a felony, Jason. You forged my signature. You stole my identity. You attempted to sell property that does not belong to you. That is not a family dispute. That is a crime. I'm your son, he screamed, tears finally starting to form, tears of fear, not remorse. You'd send me to jail over a stupid house. Not over a house, I said. Over the betrayal. You looked me in the eye for weeks, knowing you were doing this. You planned it. You involved your wife. You involved a notary. You made this a conspiracy. Tiffany grabbed Jason's arm. We're leaving. Come on, Jason, he's bluffing. We're leaving right now. You can leave, I said, but the police are waiting at the end of the driveway. If you try to run, it will only be worse. Jason slumped into a chair, putting his head in his hands. Dad, please, please, I owe. Money, bad money, I didn't have a choice. There is always a choice, I said. You could have asked me, you could have told me the truth, I might have helped you. I have helped you a dozen times before, but you decided to steal from me instead. You decided I was senile enough not to notice or weak enough not to fight. I walked over to him, I placed a hand on his shoulder, he flinched. I love you, Jason, I said, but I cannot save you from this. If I save you now, you will never learn. You will do this to someone else. You will do this until you destroy yourself completely. The only way to save you is to let you fall. I looked at Tiffany. And you encouraged this. You are just as liable. The doorbell rang. It was a sharp, electric sound. Jason looked up, his eyes red, his face wet. Dad, go answer the door, Jason, I said. He didn't move. I walked to the front door. I opened it. Detective Miller and a uniformed officer stood there. Mr. Miller. Detective asked. Yes, I said. The men you are looking for are in the kitchen. I stepped aside. I didn't watch them put the handcuffs on. I stayed in the living room looking at the framed photo of Alina on the mantel. I heard the Miranda rights being read. I heard Tiffany sobbing, blaming Jason, claiming she knew nothing. I heard Jason crying, calling my name. Dad, Dad, don't let them take me. I didn't answer. I stood like a statue until the front door closed and the house was silent again. I walked back into the kitchen. David was still sitting there. He looked shaken. It is one thing to discuss justice. It is another thing to watch a family break apart in real time. I'm sorry you had to see that, I said, sitting down. I'm sorry you had to go through it, David replied. He pushed the folder across the table. The sale is void, obviously. The title company has already shredded the deed. Your title is clean. Thank you, I said. I should go, David said, standing up. I'll be in touch if the police need a statement. David, I said. He stopped. You really like the cabin? David paused. It's a beautiful place, Thomas. It has a good spirit, despite all this. It does, I said. It's too much for me to manage alone, honestly. I've been denying it, but the maintenance is getting hard, and I don't want to go up there alone anymore. The memories are heavy. I looked at the man who had saved my home simply because it was the right thing to do. I'm not going to sell it to you, I said. David nodded, looking disappointed but understanding. I understand. However, I continued, I am looking for a caretaker, someone who can use the place on weekends, keep the roof clear, keep the dock in shape, in exchange for full use of the property whenever I'm not there, which is most of the time. David's eyes widened. Thomas, you don't have to do that. I know, I said, but I need to know that the person inside that house respects it. I need to know that when I do eventually pass it on, it won't be sold for parts by someone who doesn't care. If you like the place after a year, maybe we can talk about a legitimate sale, a land contract, something that works for both of us. David smiled. It was a genuine smile. I'd like that very much. It has been 6 months since that day. The legal process is slow. Jason is currently out on bail awaiting trial. The plea deal on the table is 3 years in minimum security plus restitution. Tiffany filed for divorce 2 weeks after the arrest. She turned state's evidence against him to save her own skin, testifying that the forgery was entirely his idea. A predictable end to a transactional relationship. I visit Jason in jail sometimes. We talk through the glass. He is angry, then sad, then angry again. He blames me. He says I chose a house over my son. I tell him the same thing every time. I chose the truth, Jason, and I chose to stop you from becoming a monster. I don't know if he understands yet. Maybe he never will. Last weekend, I drove up to the cabin. The leaves were turning, a riot of gold and crimson reflecting off Lake Bennett. When I pulled into the driveway, the roof was clear of pine needles. The woodpile was stacked with military precision. The dock was pulled in for the winter, resting securely on the bank. David was there, raking the last of the leaves. He waved when he saw me. I got out of the car and took a deep breath of the cold, clean air. It smelled of cedar and pine. It smelled of peace. My son tried to sell my past to buy his future. He failed, but in the process he forced me to secure the cabin's future in a way I hadn't expected. I walked over to David and shook his hand. "Coffee's on," David said, "and the wood stove is lit." "Perfect," I said. We walked into the house that was still mine, and for the first time in a long time it didn't feel like a museum of ghosts. It felt like a home. Justice is not always loud. Sometimes it is the ick of a handcuff. Sometimes it is the silence of a phone that doesn't ring with demands for money. And sometimes it is just sitting on a porch you still own, watching the sun go down, knowing that you stood your ground. I kept the cabin. I lost a son, perhaps, but I hope that in stopping him, I might have given him the only chance he has to eventually find himself. Rock bottom is a solid foundation, after all. It's the only place you can build something real. As for me, I have my coffee. I have the lake and I have the truth. That is enough. The mug was ceramic, thick-walled and heavy, the kind that holds the heat against a drafty room. I wrapped both hands around it, letting the warmth seep into my palms. Across the small, rough-hewn table, David blew softly on his own cup. We sat in a silence that wasn't empty. It was filled with the popping of the cedar in the stove and the settling groans of a house that was finally being cared for. "I found the rod in the subfloor under the pantry," David said eventually. He didn't look up, just watched the steam rise from his coffee. "Cut it out, replace the joist. It hadn't spread as far as I thought." "Good," I said. "That's good. You catch it early, you save the structure." The double meaning hung in the air between us, obvious but unspoken. I hadn't caught the rod in my own family early enough. I had let it spread until the only option was amputation. "I found some old tackle boxes in there, too," David continued, "and a photo album. I put them in the closet in the master bedroom. Didn't think it was right to go through them." I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. "Thank you. I'll take them with me when I go." Before I tell you what I did next, please like and subscribe to follow this story. I wasn't ready to look at those photos. I knew what they would contain. Images of a blonde-haired boy holding up a perch, smiling with a gap-toothed innocence that I now struggled to reconcile with the man sitting in a county jail cell. The dissonance was a physical pain, a dull ache behind my ribs that flared up whenever I let my guard down. We finished our coffee, and I spent the next hour walking the property with David. He showed me where he'd cleared the brush along the tree line to reduce fire risk and where he'd reinforced the steps down to the dock. He worked with a reverence for the place that Jason had never shown. To Jason, this land was a balance sheet, a liquid asset waiting to be converted into sports cars and status. To David, it was a living thing. "You're doing a fine job," I told him as I prepared to leave. I reached for my checkbook. "Let me pay you for the extra materials on the floor joist." David shook his head. "Taken care of. It was scrap wood I had from a job in town. Don't worry about it." "David, it's my home for now, isn't it?" he said, meeting my eyes. "I treat it like mine. That's the deal." I put the checkbook away. "That's the deal. Driving away from the cabin is always the hardest part." As the gravel crunched under my tires and the canopy of trees gave way to the paved county road, I felt the armor of the city sliding back into place. The peace of the lake receded, replaced by the impending reality of Monday morning, meetings with lawyers, the silent judgment of neighbors, and the relentless grinding machinery of the justice system. The drive back to the city took 3 hours. I spent most of it in silence, the radio turned off. I needed the quiet to prepare myself for what was coming next. My lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Eleanor Vance, had called me on Friday. She wanted to go over the forensic accounting report before the pretrial hearing on Tuesday. Apparently, the forgery of the deed was just the tip of the iceberg. Jason hadn't just tried to sell the cabin, he had been leveraging my identity for months. I pulled into my driveway as the sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the suburban lawn. My house, much larger than the cabin but feeling significantly emptier, loomed dark and cold. I hadn't even taken my coat off when the doorbell rang. I froze. Very few people visited unannounced these days. Friends didn't know what to say, so they stayed away. Family was non-existent. I opened the door to find Tiffany standing on the porch. She looked different. The expensive highlights were grown out, showing dark roots. Her makeup was applied with a heavier hand than usual, perhaps to hide the sleeplessness or perhaps as war paint. She wore a coat that I recognized as one Jason had bought her last Christmas, cashmere, costing more than David's truck. "Can I come in?" she asked. Her voice was brittle. I hesitated. Tiffany was the one who had turned state's evidence. Technically, she was on my side of the legal battle now, the prosecution's star witness, but emotionally, she was the co-architect of the disaster until the walls started crumbling. "I don't think that's a good idea, Tiffany," I said, blocking. "Gee, the doorway, I need to talk to you, it's about the grandkids." She knew exactly where to stick the knife. We didn't have grandkids yet, Jason and she had never gotten around to it, too busy chasing the high life, but she knew the asterisk idea of legacy was my weak point, or perhaps she meant her sister's kids, whom I had treated like family. "What about them?" "Not out here," she said, glancing at the neighbor's house. "Please, just 5 minutes." I stepped back and let her in. She walked into the living room and didn't sit down. She stood by the fireplace, running a manicured hand along the mantel. She looked like a trapped bird, twitchy and alert. "They froze the accounts," she said abruptly. "I know," I said. "It's a criminal investigation, Tiffany, that happens." "I have nothing," she snapped, turning to face me. The mask of polite contrition slipped, revealing the desperation underneath. "They took the Lexus. The cards are declined." Staying at my mother's on a fold-out couch. I testified, Robert. I did what I was supposed to do. I gave them everything on Jason, and they still froze the joint accounts. "That's between you and the district attorney," I said, keeping my voice level. "I have no control over the asset forfeiture." "You could help me," she said, her eyes narrowed. "You have plenty. You have the cabin. You have the retirement fund. You could loan me enough to get an apartment until the divorce settlement comes through." I stared at her, genuinely astounded by the audacity. It was a breathtaking display of narcissism that rivaled even Jason's. "You want me to pay you?" I asked slowly. "After you watched him forge my signature, after you notarized the fake power of attorney yourself." She flinched. "I was under duress. He made me do it. I've read your deposition, Tiffany. You said it was his idea, yes, but you didn't say he held a gun to your head. You said you went along with it because you thought I was, what was the phrase, mentally declining and wouldn't notice." Her face flushed a deep, angry red. "I'm the reason he's going away. If I hadn't flipped, it would be your word against his. I saved you." "You saved yourself," I corrected her. "You saw the ship sinking and you grabbed the only life raft. That doesn't make you a hero, it makes you a survivor. I can respect a survivor, Tiffany, but I don't have to fund them." "I have dirt," she hissed. The room went very quiet. "Excuse me." "I have dirt," she repeated, her voice dropping to a whisper. "On you, on the business. Jason told me things about how you ran your company back in the 90s, corner cutting, OSHA violations. Maybe the IRS would be interested in a reevaluation of your 1998 returns." I looked at her, and for the first time in months I didn't feel sadness or anger. I felt a cold, hard clarity. "Go ahead," I said. She blinked. "What?" "Go ahead," I repeated. "Call the IRS, call OSHA. My books are clean, Tiffany. I built my business the way I built that cabin, slow and right, but even if I hadn't, do you really think blackmailing the victim of a felony while you are currently a cooperating witness in that felony trial is a smart strategic move?" I took a step toward her. "If you say one more word about blackmail, I will call Detective Miller right now. I will tell him that his star witness is attempting to extort me. How do you think that will affect your immunity deal?" Fear flickered in her eyes. She realized she had overplayed her hand. She had mistaken my grief for weakness. It was a common mistake people made about me. They thought because I was quiet, I was soft. They thought because I loved my son, I was blind. "Get out," I said. She opened her mouth to speak, closed it, and then stormed past me. The front door slammed with a force that rattled the windows. I locked it behind her. Then I engaged the deadbolt. Then I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door and exhaled a breath I felt I'd been holding for 20 years. They were wolves, both of them. I had raised one and he had married the other. How had the DNA of my late wife, the kindest, most gentle soul I had ever known, mutated into this voracious hunger? The question plagued me that night. I couldn't sleep. I wandered the house, eventually ending up in the study. I pulled out the old photo albums, the ones I kept here, not the ones David had found. I found a picture of Jason at 7 years old. He was sitting on a bicycle, his knees scraped, crying. I remembered that day. He had fallen off and instead of getting back on, he had kicked the bike. He had screamed that the bike was stupid, that the road was stupid. He hadn't wanted to learn, he had wanted to asterisk no asterisk. He wanted the skill without the practice. I had comforted him. I had put the bike away and bought him ice cream. I should have made him get back on the bike, I thought, staring at the glossy image. I made it too easy. I smoothed the road so he would ever trip, and in doing so, I ensured he would never learn to walk. The guilt was a heavy blanket, suffocating and familiar. Tuesday came with a gray, relentless drizzle. The courthouse was a depressing monolith of concrete and glass designed to make everyone inside feel small. Eleanor met me in the lobby. She looked impeccable in a navy suit, her briefcase looking like a weapon of war. "How are you holding up, Robert?" she asked. "I had a visit from Tiffany on Sunday." Eleanor stopped walking. "Did you speak to her?" "Briefly. She asked for money. Then she tried to threaten me with tax audits." Eleanor let out a short, sharp sigh. "I'll call the DA. That woman is a liability. If she implodes on the stand, the plea deal might fall apart and we'll be looking at a full jury trial." "Would that be so bad?" "It would be expensive," Eleanor said. "And it would be public. Every dirty laundry basket your family has ever owned would be overturned in open court. Jason's defense attorney is a shark. If Tiffany looks unreliable, he'll pivot to painting you as the villain, the controlling, senile father who gave mixed signals about the property." "I am not senile," I said, bristling. "I know that, you know that, but a jury sees an old man and a crying son and things get messy. We want the plea deal, Robert. We want him to take the 3 years." We entered the conference room. The air conditioning was humming too loudly. 10 minutes later, the door opened and Jason was led in. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit. It was a cliché, but seeing it on my own flesh and blood was a shock that never quite wore off. He had lost weight. His skin was sallow, deprived of sunlight and good food. He wasn't handcuffed, but a guard stood by the door. He sat down opposite me. He didn't look at me. He looked at Eleanor. "Where's my lawyer?" he demanded. "He's running late," Eleanor said, "but we can start. We're here to discuss the restitution schedule." "I don't have any money," Jason spat. "You know that. You took it all." "The court seized the assets derived from fraud," Eleanor said calmly. "Robert is here to discuss what happens to the legitimate debts you incurred in his name, the credit cards, the loans." Jason finally looked at me. His eyes were dark, rimmed with red. There was no remorse there, only a simmering, petulant rage. "You look happy," he said to me. "I'm not happy, Jason," I said softly. "I'm heartbroken." "Don't give me that," he sneered. "You won, you got your precious cabin, you got your truth. You destroyed my marriage and my life over a piece of dirt." "You destroyed your own life," I said. "I just stopped you from destroying mine along with it." "Mom would have never done this," he said. It was a low blow one he had used before. Usually it worked. Usually it made me retreat. But today, after seeing the cabin, after seeing David's care, after Tiffany's threats, something had hardened in me. "Your mother," I said, my voice shaking slightly, "valued honesty above everything. She would be devastated, Jason, but she wouldn't be surprised. She saw the way you lied about your grades in high school. She saw the way you stole from her purse. She protected you then because she thought you would grow out of it. But you didn't grow, you just got better at hiding it." Jason slammed his hand on the table. The guard took a step forward. "I did it for us," Jason shouted. "I was going to invest the money. I had a lead on a development deal in Arizona. I was going to triple the value and buy the cabin back before you even knew it was gone. I was trying to help. By forging my signature, it was a bridge loan." He insisted, his delusion complete. "It was just paperwork. You're so obsessed with the rules you can't see the big picture." "I'm a businessman, Dad. You're just a relic's keeper." "I'm a man who sleeps at night," I said. The door opened, and Jason's lawyer, a harried-looking man named Mr. Friedman, bustled in. Sorry, Judge ran long in arraignments. What did I miss?" "My father was just leaving," Jason said, staring at me with pure venom. I stood up. I felt incredibly old. "I'll leave the restitution details to the lawyers, Eleanor. I can't do this today." I walked out of the room, leaving my son to his orange jumpsuit and his fantasies of Arizona real estate. I needed air. I walked out of the courthouse and into the rain. I didn't go to my car. I walked down the street to a small park and sat on a wet bench. The interaction had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. Jason truly believed he was the victim. He had rewritten reality so thoroughly that he was the hero of his own tragedy. How do you reach someone like that? How do you rehabilitate a mind that rejects the very concept of accountability? Maybe you don't. Maybe 3 years in minimum security wouldn't fix him. Maybe nothing would. I thought about David again. I thought about the way he had stacked the woodpile. Mill. Itery precision. I took my phone out. I scrolled to David's number. I hadn't done a background check on him when I hired him. I had gone on gut instinct. But now, with the world feeling so unstable, I found myself wanting to know who exactly was guarding my sanctuary. I called a private investigator I had used for business vetting years ago. Jim, it's Robert. I need a favor. I need a rundown on a name. David Miller, currently living in Lake Bennett. No, nothing bad. I need to know who he is. I hung up. It felt like a betrayal of the trust David and I had built, but after Jason, trust was a currency I was short on. The weeks dragged on. The leaves fell, stripping the trees bare. The world turned gray and brown. The legal wrangling continued. Tiffany's immunity deal held up despite her threats. She testified in a closed deposition that sealed Jason's fate. Faced with her evidence and the forensic accounting, Jason's lawyer advised him to take the deal. Sentencing was set for January. I spent Thanksgiving alone. I cooked a turkey breast and ate it while watching football, ignoring the silence of the house. 2 days later, the investigator called me back. "I got the file on your guy, David," Jim said. "Interesting read. Tell me." "He's legitimate, honorable discharge from the Marines, 2 tour in Afghanistan, combat engineer." That explains the carpentry skills. "Okay," I said, feeling a wave of relief. "That fits." "There's more," Jim said. "After he got back, he had a rough patch. DUI in 2018. Assault charge in 2019 bar fight. Guy was harassing a woman. David stepped in, broke the guy's jaw. Charges were dropped, but he did some court-ordered anger management. Anything involving theft, fraud, clean as a whistle on that front. In fact, his credit score is terrible because he refuses to use credit cards. Pays cash for everything. He's a ghost, Robert. No social media, no debt. He just exists." "Why is he at the lake?" I asked. "A guy with those skills could make good money in construction in the city." "His wife," Jim said. The tone of his voice changed. "She died 2 years ago. Car accident. Drunk driver hit her. David was driving. He wasn't at fault. He was sober, but he was behind the wheel. He survived. She didn't." I closed my eyes. The image of David, quiet and solitary, raking leaves, suddenly took on a new dimension. "He sold their house in the suburbs," Jim continued. "Moved around for a bit, ended up in your neck of the woods. Looks like he's just trying to be somewhere quiet." "Thank you, Jim," I whispered. "Send me the bill." I hung up and sat in the dark for a long time. David wasn't just a caretaker. He was a man hiding from his own ghosts. He was rebuilding my cabin because he couldn't rebuild his life. We were 2 broken men guarding a pile of wood and stone against the encroaching dark. I decided then that I would go back up to the cabin for Christmas. I couldn't spend the holiday in this empty house, and I certainly couldn't spend it visiting Jason in jail. I packed the car on December 23rd. The forecast called for snow. The drive up was treacherous. The roads were slick with black ice, and the wind whipped the pines into a frenzy. By the time I reached the turnoff for Lake Bennett, the snow was falling in thick, heavy sheets. I worried about the driveway. It was steep and prone to drifting. If it wasn't cleared, I'd never get the sedan up to the house. I turned the corner and saw the driveway. It was pristine, not just plowed, but shoveled down to the gravel. I pulled up to the house. Smoke was pouring from the chimney, a gray ribbon against the white sky. David came out onto the porch as I parked. He was wearing a heavy flannel jacket and work boots. He didn't smile, but his shoulders relaxed when he saw it was me. "Roads are bad," he said as I got out. "Before I tell you what I did next, please like and subscribe to follow this story." "Terrible," I agreed. "I wasn't sure I'd make it." "I kept the drive clear just in case," he said. He grabbed my suitcase before I could protest. "Come on in, stew is on." The cabin was warm. It smelled of beef stew and wood smoke and pine. In the corner there was a small Christmas tree, just a sapling, really decorated with strings of popcorn and cranberries. "I hope you don't mind," David said, nodding at the tree. "Found it down by the creek. It was growing too close to the bank, roots were washing out. Figured I'd give it a last hurrah." "It's perfect," I said. We ate dinner at the small table. The wind howled outside, rattling the panes, but inside the fire held the cold at bay. "I know about your wife, David," I said quietly halfway through the meal. David's spoon paused halfway to his mouth. He set it down slowly. He didn't look angry, just tired. "I figured you'd check eventually," he said. "A man in your position, you have to be careful." "I am sorry," I said, truly. David looked at the fire. "SH. He loved snow. We used to go up to the mountains in Colorado. She'd ski. I'd just sit in the lodge and drink cocoa." He smiled, a fleeting, painful thing. "I couldn't save her, Robert. The truck came out of nowhere. One second she was laughing at a joke I made, the next." He trailed off. "I couldn't save my son," I said. "Not from the truck, but from himself. I watched the collision coming for 20 years and I didn't grab the wheel." You can't drive for other people, David said. I learned that in the Corps. You can cover their six, you can drag them out of the line of fire, but you can't walk the patrol for them. I suppose not. Jason is where he is because of choices he made, David said firmly. Not because of you. You gave him a moral compass. He chose to break it. It was the first time someone had absolved me without it sounding like a platitude. Coming from a man who had seen war and death, it carried weight. What will you do? I asked him. When the winter is over, David shrugged. I like it here. If you'll have me, I have some ideas for the deck. The railing is loose on the south side and the roof needs new shingles before the spring rains. Stay, I said. Stay as long as you want. We can work out a formal arrangement, a salary. Room and board is fine, he said. And maybe access to the workshop in the shed. I used to make furniture. I'd like to try that again. The workshop is yours. We sat in silence for a while longer. It was a comfortable silence. Merry Christmas, Robert, David said. Merry Christmas, David. January brought the sentencing. I sat in the back row of the courtroom. Tiffany was there, sitting on the opposite side, looking resolute. She didn't look at me. Jason stood before the judge. He read a statement. It was polished, likely written by his lawyer. He expressed deep regret for his actions. He apologized to the court. He did not apologize to me. The judge was a stern woman with glasses perched on the end of her nose. She looked at Jason over the rims. Mr. Sterling, she said, you had every advantage, a good education, a supportive family, a father who built a legacy, and yet you chose greed. You chose to prey on the very person who gave you life. This court sees many desperate people who steal to survive. You stole to maintain a lifestyle you did not earn. She sentenced him to 36 months. Restitution of $450,000, $5 years of probation upon release. When the gavel banged, it sounded like a gunshot. Jason was led away. At the door he turned. He found me in the crowd. His expression was unreadable. It wasn't anger anymore. It was shock. The reality was finally setting in. He was going to prison. I didn't look away. I nodded to him. A small, sad acknowledgement. I am here. I am watching. I am not leaving. He disappeared through the door. I walked out of the courthouse. Eleanor was waiting. It's done, she said. Is it? The legal part is, now comes the hard part, moving on. Thank you, Eleanor. I drove straight to the cabin. I didn't stop at my house. I didn't want to be in the city. When I arrived, David was on the roof. He was bundled up, securing a tarp over a section where the shingles had blown off in a recent storm. He climbed down the ladder when he saw me. How did it go? He asked. 3 years, I said. David nodded. He stripped off his work gloves. Coffee, please. We went inside. The routine was familiar now, the fire, the mugs, the silence, but something had shifted. The tension of the impending trial was gone, replaced by a vast, open future. Jason was gone, for 3 years at least. I had 3 years to decide what to do with the rest of my life. I'm thinking of selling the house in the city, I said suddenly. David looked up. Oh, it's too big, too many ghosts. I don't need 5 bedrooms, I don't need the country club membership. What would you do? I was thinking. Maybe I'd build a small guest cottage here on the property, just past the tree line. You could stay in the main cabin or we could swap, but I think I want to be here full time. David smiled. It was a real smile this time, reaching his eyes. There's a flat spot up on the ridge, he said. Good drainage, great view of the lake. We could clear the trees, pour a foundation in the spring. I asked. I can frame it, David said. I can do the wiring. I'm not great at plumbing, but I can learn. I can help, I said. I used to be pretty handy with a hammer before I became a businessman. Then we have a plan, David said. I looked out the window at the frozen lake. The sun was setting, painting the ice in shades of violet and rose. It was breathtakingly beautiful. I had lost my son. I had lost the illusion of the perfect family, but I had found something else. I had found a friend. I had found a purpose. And I had kept the land. The land doesn't lie. It doesn't forge signatures. It doesn't betray you. If you treat it right, it treats you right. David, I said. Yeah, do you think he can change Jason? David took a long sip of his coffee. He seemed to weigh the words carefully. I think, he said, that prison strips you down. It takes away everything you think you are, your clothes, your name, your pride. When you're stripped down, you have to look at what's left. Sometimes what's left is ugly and people get worse. But sometimes you find the part of you that was buried under all the bullshit. He looked at me. He has to want to find it, Robert. You can't find it for him. I nodded. I know. But David added, knowing that there's a place like this, knowing that his father didn't fold, that might be the thing that guides him back someday. Someday, I repeated. I stood up and walked to the window. I pressed my hand against the cold glass. I would build the cottage. I would help David fix the roof. I would visit Jason once a month, every month. I would listen to his anger until it ran out. I would wait for the silence that comes after the rage. And in that silence, maybe, just maybe, we could start to talk. Not as father in disappointment, not as victim and criminal, but as two men who had both lost their way and were trying to find the path home. For now, the wood stove was warm, the coffee was hot, and the cabin stood strong against the winter wind. I turned back to the room. "Let's look at those plans for the cottage," I said. David stood up and walked over to the desk where he kept his sketchpad. He flipped it open. "I was thinking," he said, pointing to a rough charcoal drawing, "that we should face the porch east, catch the sunrise." "I like that," I said. "Sunrise is good." We sat there as the light faded, discussing lumber prices and insulation values, two builders planning a future on a foundation of rock bottom. It wasn't the future I had expected, but as I looked at the lines on the paper, I realized it was a future I could live with. It was real, and that was enough.